Subjects and controls were approached by the investigator. Essentially all agreed, and this results in very low self-selection bias. Controls were well matched by age and sex. I can show you a map of the Mars Hill situation after, where the controls were and where the subjects were. This was initiated after media reports of complaints and no government investigation. Considered a pilot study, not meant to evaluate a full dose response, rather which would have been distance versus symptoms, just to assess for relative risks of sleep disturbance and health complaints in that group of people. And the goal was to collect preliminary data for the Maine Medical Association, because this was all over the media. "22 subjects were interviewed, 27 controls were interviewed. They were age and sex matched. Here they are. People who were troubled by shadow flicker. 32% of the exposed people were troubled. None of the non-exposed people were. The non-exposed people were living about 3 miles away. The exposed are within 3,500 feet, so please just keep that in your mind. This is shadow flicker. I recorded this myself. I found it distracting. Weight change. We had 36% of our sample of the exposed people who had unintentional weight change versus 4% or 1 person in the non-exposed group. We had new or worsened headaches in 41% of the exposed people and in 1 person or 4% of the non-exposed people. Additionally, 3 of the 9 affected had new prescription. So they were actually going to the pharmacy, turning in a prescription, spending money to solve this problem. Auditory vestibular complaints. We had 3 people who reported dizziness, 3 people with tinnitus or ringing in the ear, 1 person with ear pain, and 3 people who described ear pulsations. Total about 41%. Compared to 0 in the non-exposed. Sleep disturbance was the most striking finding, and we had 18 people affected with sleep disturbance out of 22. That's 82%. And we asked them to break up the symptoms. Some people had more than 1 type of symptom, so the numbers amount to more than 100. They were asked about whether the problems were falling asleep or waking, and how many times a week it occurred. So we have 82% versus 4%. So at least for this small study, we have a relative risk of 20 for sleep disturbance. Psychiatric symptoms were another area that there was gross asymmetry. In terms of anger, real anger, visceral anger, we had 77% of people describing episodes of anger. We had 10 people out of 22 who described depression. 4 of them had to take prescription medication for it. And that would be 18%. We didn't have any onset of psychiatric symptoms in the non-exposed people. So prescription medication use, 15 new were increased. 11 additional prescriptions were offered and declined in the exposed group. Types of medications were largely for sleep and for psychologic symptoms. In the control group, there were 4 new prescriptions. 3 were antihypertensives, and 1 was antiarthritic, which is what you might expect for a population of that size. Quality of life perception decreased in 95%, considered moving away in 86%. We had no complaints of that sort in the control group that lived 3 miles away. These are some of the comments which were recorded. no desire to go outside, feel trapped, dreams have been dashed. It was our dream home, it's all been stolen. My husband who has MS, only pleasure in life was to see the wild animals, they're gone. Sinking feeling every night when I come home and see them. Now, this is not scientific data, but it's qualitative data and it's real. These were some of the comments I had on anger. Absolute rage. You feel you want to kill someone and you don't know who to kill. This is from a 67-year-old woman. So angry I could kill, from a 65-year-old man. Makes my blood boil. Hopelessness. Nobody will help us. This is an awful thing to have happened to you. People don't believe us. Complaints fall on deaf ears. No one cares, no one listens. They just tread on us. This was very sad. I had, out of 4 of the 22 started crying during the interview. 2 of them were men. And when you see a rough-hewn teamster with a tractor cap start crying, that's not usual. Again, it's qualitative data, but it happened. Allowed the noise to go from 45 to 50 decibels. And part of that variance said, when they allowed it, that 50 decibels is approximately equivalent to the noise that songbirds make. And that was right in the state variance. So clearly the turbines, they do not sound like songbirds. They do not sound like flatulence or other internal body sounds. They have their own unique sound. This is interesting. This is a family in the UK. They live 3,000 feet away from this linear arrangement of turbines. This sound was recorded in their daughter's bedroom window with the window cracked open 3 inches. They were counseled to log on to copingwithnoise.com and try to move from aggressive resentment into passive acceptance. Nocebo effect is something that the American Wind Energy Association is talking about in their report. The real translation is it's all in their heads. That has had about as much peer review as this statement here that wind turbine noise has killed 400 goats in Taiwan. In fact, this is actually stronger data because here they have the bodies of 400 goats. And it turns out that goats are remarkably sensitive. They're shy creatures. And in DeKalb, Illinois, I was told today about 12 goats have died in proximity. So I've been told I just have a few minutes left, so I'm going to have to rush through here. This concept here demonstrates, well, we have transient noise and we have continuous noise. Airports are transient. Road traffic in most places is transient. Wind turbine noise is continuous. And that's all this image here shows. There is no evidence that the audible or subaudible sounds emitted by wind turbines have any direct adverse physiological effects. This is one of the conclusions in the AWIA report. And notice the word direct. So technically, they're correct. Indirect effects are all over the place. Direct effects may not be. So it's kind of a legalism. Sounds emitted by wind turbines are not unique. Well, we know that that's not true. That the sounds from wind turbines could not plausibly have direct adverse health consequences. Well, we know that that's not true. Annoyance leads to sleep deprivation, leads to illness. This is Pedersen, what she said herself. And Pedersen is heavily quoted. Dr. McConey mentioned her. Adverse reactions could possibly lead to stress-related symptoms due to prolonged physiological arousal and hindrance to psychological restoration. She said that about her own wind turbine work. So, annoyance is not a pathological entity, says AWIA. Well, that is not true. Major cause of concern about wind turbine noise is its fluctuating sound. Some may find this annoying, a reaction that depends primarily on personal characteristics as opposed to intensity of the sound level. They compare it to a dripping faucet at one point. Well, you can fix a dripping faucet. Use of the word annoyance repeatedly exploits American lay interpretation versus original in Pedersen et al., on which this review draws. The conclusions deny known and obvious link between annoyance and sleep deprivation leading to illness. And I believe this is inappropriate for a review that claims to be concerned with health effects.